Finance Committee into session and to order. And first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Is there anything we need to add or modify on the agenda that we have today?
I'm good.
Okay, I guess so. Is it the convention to welcome a motion to approve the agenda?
It's up to you. If you can do consensus or a motion.
I'm happy just to stand on formality a little bit. I duck it usually, so I'd welcome a motion to approve the agenda.
So
Mr.
moved.
Chair.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Randy.
Mr. Chair, move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda as presented, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to the minutes from January 12th. I did have a chance to peruse them, but I wasn't here, but I'll continue with convention to vote in favor if the two members are in support of them. So any corrections or questions or comments about the minutes from January 12th?
No, I move the approval of the minutes from January.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the January 12th minutes as presented. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All right. On to the finance report. I guess we pass it over to Lynn for this.
All right. Well, good morning all. Nice to see everyone. So we'll take a few minutes and look at our quarterly report here.
Hey, Lynn, I'm really struggling to hear you. There's a lot of static on the line.
I'm going to turn my fan off and hopefully that will help. Did that help, Greg?
Still getting some distortion, some
Digital breakup, yeah.
Okay, how you doing now? Does that help?
Can you try can you try maybe turning off your screen? I don't know what to do.
Okay, I can do that. No, I have no problem doing that.
Hey, Lynn, maybe back your camera and your speaker, back it up a little bit, because I think it's just distorting a little bit.
That could be.
Okay, let's try that. Does that help?
No, it's not your
No.
camera. Maybe turn your camera back on and a little more space, as Mark recommends,
Yeah.
between your.
Sounds like
yourself
you're
and the
overloading the microphone.
It's way up there.
Huh.
So I'm probably an arm,
Wow.
at least an arm away. Now I'm.
Try there.
How is that? Can you hear me now? Is that
it's a
better?
little bit better.
A
Wow.
little better.
Okay. If I could turn I'm gonna just shoot my video someplace else.
You have a lot of talking. I wonder if she should switch to the phone.
Okay. How is
Yeah,
that?
you
Is that better?
It's
No,
still
it's-
pretty staticky. I think Jim's suggestion of maybe dialing in, we can wait for a moment to accommodate that, because this is, kind of the start of the show, Lynn.
Oh,
yeah, if you want to call, if you want to call in to the number, there should be a phone number in the meeting invite.
dial by Tacoma. Okay. I'm gonna.
You should be able to even click up on the, by the mute button, I think, right? And switch to phone audio. If you click on the little arrow that goes up from your option to mute
Okay.
and switch to phone audio.
Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Get
If you
ready.
just dial in, you end up being there twice.
There she goes. She muted it.
All right, we see your phone on there now. You probably hit *6 to unmute that phone. You can also turn
All
your.
right.
Yes, much better. Well, you can turn your camera back on too, and we can see you while you talk.
Well, I have it totally on the other side of my partition. It's on the floor now.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So I apologize. Okay, thank you all for your assistance and your patience, and we'll dive into our quarterly report. It's a 2-page report, and it's document that you all seen before, and a quick summary that the board approved our annual budget of $2.7 million in June. 9 months into the year, we have received $2,263,856. I will highlight a couple of our line items. On our AOP Title V program, as of last week, we've received all of our funds. This report is reflecting we've received 95%. It's a major program of the agency. The NOC program, second line, we've received, over 75% of our targeted income, and that program is still very active, and it continues to be active, mostly by our engineers and all their work. The annual registration, we've received about 97% of expected revenue. We don't really anticipate receiving a lot more income through the remaining 3 months. There were some closures of some businesses. It really didn't make a major difference on our expected income. Assessments, we have received our last payment on the assessment revenue. So as of last week, we are at 100%. The wood stove, all of our grants, as you know, I submit a quarterly reimbursement request to Ecology and EPA for all of our grants. So you will see the January, February, March grant reimbursement next time we meet regarding our fourth quarter report. We're all on target there with our grants. The community scale air toxics program is still listed because it had some prior year activity, but that program has ended. Under fines, we've received, yes, your eyes are not misleading you. It does say 349%. We've received 191,000 plus, and this is a program that it's total estimating. Get the crystal ball out, and we've received a large portion of the penalties represents a few of the main sources, McKinley, Westport, Crown. The smaller penalties have to do with violations of burning and misuse of the asbestos procedures. And we're still getting some fines that will continue to come in through the year. And Jeff will probably be talking about that in a little more detail when we get into the fiscal year 2023 budget. Moving on
I can just jump in
down,
really. Hey, Lynn, I can just jump in really quickly here and just say that, of course, we don't like to see those fines that much, because that means that folks, especially the permitted sources, are out of compliance. And we're actually in conversation now with a number of sources regarding some pretty large penalties. And so this number could go up significantly yet again before the end of the fiscal year, and some of them will undoubtedly drag into the next fiscal year as well. So again, we don't like to see it because it means that some of our major sources are not in compliance with their permits. But again, we work very closely, very hard with them to keep them in compliance. So
a lot of preliminary education is definitely important there. Thanks,
I was gonna
Jeff.
say, are we helping them to get into compliance before fining them is the big question.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We work with them. Through the inspections. The regular inspections. Our permit engineers are always available to provide assistance to them in terms of are they understanding the permit conditions. So yeah, we work very closely with them to keep them in compliance. And again, we've got the penalty matrix that the board approved, I think back in 2018, that is our guideline for when we do establish penalties. And so again, that is simply a guideline, but that's what we use to establish the penalties.
Thank
Good
you.
information.
Lynn, can you go into the wood stove bounty program? Is the low percentage of revenue so far represent fewer people doing it, or the payments lagging behind, or can you just explain that?
And good question, thank you. Yeah, the program's running slower due to shortages of inventory, such as our heat pumps, the ductless systems. And, you know, that's according to vendors as well. And homeowners are sort of kind of reluctant to commit to a commitment of paying out funds when it could be 3, 6, 9 months. I know I have a special friend that had to put $4,500 down. They're still waiting. They said it's going to be another 4 months. So, yeah, when you're waiting that and you're putting that much money out and it's in someone else's hands, I mean, you know when you're paying the IRS, but golly, when you pay, you know, vendor, you want to make sure you're going to get that return and that investment. So, and Dan Nelson, I know you're online if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, Greg, I would note this was supposed to start July 1. We didn't get the grant contract signed and implemented until October. And being then in the heating season, most people are fairly reluctant to have their primary heating source pulled out of their house during the winter. So winter is always a slow time for that. So we're seeing an uptick starting now. This week, I'm sure it slowed down a little bit, but by next month, I would expect to see a lot more applications coming in.
Great. Thank you both for those explanations. Makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. But yeah, so that really wraps up our revenue. Our revenue, we received 83%, and so we're in a good position right now.
Lynn,
Any further questions?
Lynn, I was just wondering, do you need the board to approve moving money from the vacation and sick contingency for Fran's payout, or how does that work?
Yes, sir. Good question, Mr. Cooper. On page 2 of the fund balance sheet, I'll be discussing that. And at this point, we're not looking at conducting a budget amendment in short. But
okay, cool. Thank you.
All right with you. Okay.
And let me just make, so just to follow up to that, is that how are you feeling about whether you're going to go into the general fund contingency draw this year or not?
0.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Moving on. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now moving on to the expenditures. With our expenditures, we have expended about 69% of our budget, and for the payroll costs, that represent about 75% of our expenses, where we should be. And I'll discuss again more of the effect of Fran's retirement payments in page 2, that's forthcoming. Our non-payroll expenditures, we have expended about 63%. There's nothing really unusual about this line. You see that the wellness program, bless the committee, and public education were about 109%. That's okay. We've only overspent, well, it looks like we've overspent about $36 in the wellness program, but we actually received 2 mini grants that offset that. That's included in our miscellaneous revenue. And we did have some higher, printing cost in public education, which is good. And, other than that, there's really not much to speak to on the non-payroll expenditures. For maintenance and operations on our office building, yes, originally we had scheduled to make a principal and interest payment on our building, but if you recall last year, the Thurston County Treasurer's Office changed the payment requirements, though we actually received a bonus on this because it reduced our interest. We did not know if the board was going to approve that early payment or not. And in the meantime, we kept it in our budget in the event that the board didn't approve, but they did. And so we're only having to make a $200 interest payment this year. And let's see, we're a little bit high on our alarm and monitoring and security. We did have some issues over the last quarter that required some maintenance issues on our panels, our aging security panels, that we might have to consider adding that to our leasehold improvement list. But at this point, we're on target. We did not change out the HVAC system that we had originally budgeted, included in the budget of $30,000. Right now, as long as that HVAC system's working, there's really no need to change it out. It's servicing 2 small offices. So, and during the next fiscal year, we will be getting some quotes on the change out. So we are prepared in the event to prevent a large delay to move forward.
Lynn, to ask about that, I mean, we've talked about the, the wood stove bounty already and the real supply chain delays. So, it's, that kind of just in time maintenance might not be appropriate right now. I guess I'm just wondering if we want to get ahead of that.
Right, and our HVAC company is, coming in, they used to come in every 3.5 months. They're actually coming in every 2 months. And our oldest system is still humming along, which is good. Our HVAC maintenance, who has been with us for a while and very familiar with our systems, would definitely make a note and prioritize that if he felt there was a need. And as long as we maintain it, as long as we keep him coming on a regular basis and being able to identify any potential issues, I agree with you, Greg. We have to look at that too.
Okay, well, it's good to hear about the preventative maintenance that's being done on a more regular basis.
Yeah, but and I'll just jump in. That is something Lynn and I have talked about. So again, because of the supply chain issues and just not wanting to be surprised, and so yeah, we'll continue to again keep a close eye on that. And again, at some point, we'll talk more about the building or the various maintenance things that we've got in the queue. So that's something I've been getting up to speed on and kind of getting a sense for prioritizing those things.
Mr. Chair, if I may for 1 second, one recommendation would be to step in and you're in between seasons, which is the perfect time to do this, to go out and bring in about 5 different companies and have them put a bid. The reason why I say that is those that are without work right now or in between work, because as soon as it gets hot, it all shifts back again. So I would think you might want to consider just getting those bids in now while you're in between season. Other than that, when you have to do it because it breaks, that's going to cost us.
Yes, understood.
Yeah, I was going to make the same recommendation, and honestly, I'd also like to understand better what it would take to get the whole building off of natural gas as well. So that I know that has implications in newer systems even. So. Yeah, Jim, that's something that I've thought about and we've talked a little bit about, because that's certainly a goal that I have as well, is to get everything off of natural gas. Yeah, right. To Randy's point, just getting kind of that meta bid for the whole building with some phases might be really good timing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially based on competition, letting them know that you're going to 5 different ones.
Will do. Got it written down for sure. And those notes you'll see and reflected on our fiscal year 2023 leasehold maintenance improvements on our office building. And thanks for that input. Moving on to the operations of our wood smoke, our air monitoring sites. We are at about 28%. Dan Nelson already shared with you some feedback on the wood smoke reduction and why it's slowed down, but it will start picking up here. In fact, I just paid $5,050 yesterday to a couple vendors. So again, that'll be reflected on the next quarterly report. And let's see, monitoring equipment, general monitoring. So we're on target here with a lot of our expenditures. As you know, security deposits, that's paid out when we have movement in our tenants, which we don't. Knock on wood, we won't. And so that wraps up the expenditures at about 69%. So we're on target there. Questions? Before we move on to page 2, the fund balance. The fund balance is a snapshot of our checking account with Thurston County Treasurer's Office. We started the year July 2021 with $1.8 million. When you add in 9 months of our revenue and reduce our expenditures, we're at $2.3 million. The next couple of lines. have to do with Mr. Cooper's request on how the budget will affect the payment to our former director. What's going to happen is likely in May, after I make the payment, May or June, I will come to the board with a resolution seeking approval to move funds out of our vacation sick contingency fund of $44,000 into our general fund to reimburse it where we're paying the sick leave payout for Fran. That'll happen on May 31st. So typically, I could do a resolution at the May board meeting, or I could do it at the June. Okay. By the May board meeting, I will have the actual number that will be paid out on Fran's behalf.
Does that
that
calculation accommodate for putting in Jeff's liabilities
No, sir. I won't do that until June 30th.
in June? Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Perfect.
when I update. Yeah, that's when I'll update all of our contingency funds.
Okay, so you won't do that till June 30th, but our meeting is before the June 30th mark. Then I would prefer that we get it out of the way as soon as possible if one's not relying on the other.
Well, and my
So-
question is, from a cash flow standpoint, do you need that shift before the act? Can we just do that transfer in the budget action all at once?
Okay, I think there's a couple of questions going on here. So, in terms of Fran's payment of $44,000, that's going to happen in this fiscal year. When I roll up all of the vacation and comp time, sick leave accruals for staff for fiscal year 2022, that always happens at fiscal year end and after. We don't get those accruals until after the fact. And so updates to all of our contingency and capital funds follows the fiscal year 2022 budget year for accruals of vacation and sick. I could estimate what Jeff's is, but it's premature, and typical process for updating our accruals for these contingency funds happens following June 30th, following the payroll of June 30th, so I can properly and accurately update that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. What I was saying was, because you have the cash in the budget already, it doesn't seem like you need to move Fran's money until you do that balancing of the whole account in July. Does that make sense?
And I'm fine with that.
It just saves
But
an extra action, right?
Right, but if we were to, I would like to give a quick example. If we were paying this out in January of 2022, the $44,000, I would have to seek board approval to move and use that money, even though we have budget authority. Because the board established the contingency fund for vacation and sick leave, in order for ORCAA to use that, the board has to approve me actually using that money before year end. So, yes, we have budget authority, and yes, I can reconcile at year end the use of those funds. Did I confuse y'all?
Yeah. Don't let me overthink it. Whatever the easiest thing is, I think the personnel policy prevails, and you have to pay it out. But that's just me.
Okay, I will talk this out with Jeff, and I will definitely bring this back to your May Finance Committee meeting with a resolution or a request for a motion to approve to move funds. Okay, great.
Lynn, I'm still kind of catching up on the fund balance sheet here. And under the long-term liabilities, there's a bunch of stuff listed, but is that just the payout to the 44,108, just the payout to Fran?
Oh, that's ORCAA long-term liabilities. That's her office building, our principal and interest that we have.
It just happens to be the same number. Okay.
40.
I thought maybe the final payment was Fran, so okay.
Oh, good pickup. Yes, that is the estimated principal and interest that we have. It includes some fiscal agent fees as well. They always charge you that. So
Right.
in December 2022, we have one more payment. Yay.
Good, good. Okay. I see it now. The 44,264 is the contingency draw for vacation. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that 2.3,895,000 is contingency funds the board has established. And then we have about 1,400,000 as unreserved, unrestricted. Okay, any further questions on the fund balance sheet? Good
Just
question, John.
Remind me, what is the contingency rate that we've agreed on as a board? Is it a percentage or a specific cash amount?
Right, in the resolutions approved by the board, right here, I'm just bringing them up. Back in 2014, there was a reserve established for the vacation and sick. So on June 30th, we update our accruals, well, following the June 30th. Back in 2012, ORCAA by resolution established capital reserves for our building, monitoring, and database.
And what are the numbers? How do we calculate those two reserves? What's the number?
Based on projections, we're trying with the database, like, let's see, for the office building, we include $30,000 during the budget approval process each year unless budgets are tight. And for the monitoring equipment, that has been at the same level for years, because with monitoring equipment, we typically include any of those expenditures in our budget process. The database equipment, that's an animal. That's 180,000 that we have in there, and we try to reserve as much as possible. This is a area that we've looked at, we've talked to other air agencies about in terms of what they're paying, what they've paid in the past. That one's a hard one to kind of decipher, but we are looking at trying to update our very old database we have, and the dollar amounts that other air agencies are paying are pretty phenomenal.
So did that answer your question, Greg? I mean, I think it sounds like in terms of for some of those line items in the contingency funds, just kind of estimated, but I don't know if there's been like a set, like a percentage or something that's been set in the past.
No percentage. There has been no percentage that's been set. And we've exceeded the targets. And during previous board meetings, board members have provided input that we should really consider increasing those contingency funds.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, no, that addresses my question. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on our third quarter financial report before we move on to the fiscal year 2023 draft budget?
Good job.
Okay, great.
Yes, thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to close that out. Bring up my fiscal year 2023 budget. Let me know when y'all have yours up. You probably have a hyperlink, so you're already there before I got there. Great. Okay. Okay, so included with the annual budget this year was an assumptions page summarizing this unique budget we have before you. Unique meaning we got quite a few things that come into play here with the high CPI of 7.4%, consistent with what the board had previously approved back in 2018. ORCAA will follow the calendar year-end prior year CPI, 7.4%. Yeah, wow. Thank you. I see that. Jim, I can read your lips. And so that is why you're seeing four options here. Option one is 3%. It's consistent with an existing resolution the board approved allowing ORCAA to pass on a 3% increase unless a workload analysis identifies where expenditures are exceeding fees. They have. A workload analysis has been completed by a professional engineer, Mark Gooden. Option 2 is a mid-range between 3% and 7.4%. So that's 5.2. Option 3 is obviously a 7.4% CPI. Option 1, 2, and 3 is applying the percentage towards fees and expenditures having to do with payroll. So fees are being increased consistently with 3%, and so is the salaries being increased at 3%. Same way with the mid, 5.2, and the max, 7.4. Option 4 is a mix. Fees have increased 7.4%, and salaries will increase 3%. We all on board so far? Okay. Anyone, any comments at this point?
I
So
just
this
want
is-
to comment how fascinating it is how little that affects the bottom line of revenue. Like those are big,
Yeah.
those are big shifts, but the revenue is, you know, within 100K on all of those options.
Right.
Yeah, and I just, again, we've looked at this, we've thought carefully about it, and Lynn and I worked, and we decided to put together the fourth option just to show, because again, we could make different decisions around this, and my metaphor is just different dials that we're turning, and so just to show if we make some different assumptions. And the reason why I felt comfortable putting forward an option around the 3% salary, the salary adjustment, was because, again, we will be doing a salary survey in the coming year. And so if we find out that salaries are significantly below where they should be to keep a competitive, to keep a workforce, then we'll have another opportunity to adjust as part of that. So again, that's why I felt comfortable putting that forward. But again, it's just an example of some of the different decisions that we could make in this.
So the budget does include, I'm sure you all had time to read the assumptions page. Going through our revenues here, all of our grants are on multi-year contracts. And the core federal and state, the PM 2.5, the Chica Peak, the wood stove reduction, wood stove education grant, those are all multi-year, and some of them are on their second year cycle. So Jeff's got a breather this year until next year when we start a renegotiation. There is a new grant in our budget, the ARP, the American Rescue Planning Grant. What is it? It's the American Rescue Program. Apologize. This is a new grant that is being added to our budget for fiscal year 2023, and it has to do with the we're setting this. It's 100% funds going into the maintenance and operations of our Chica Peak site. We're getting a new shelter, which is desperately needed, and I know that Odell is tickled pink about this. We're working in collaboration with Macaw Tribe. They're providing some great in-kind resources, and we're actually starting on that. It'll pay for the infrastructure improvements at Chica Peak. Odell will likely be giving you a brief update during her board report as well. So we're excited about that.
Yep, that's great news that we're getting that infusion of additional funds to help really upgrade the site up there. So and I know Adele worked hard to get that grant application submitted last year, and so great news that we've got that. And she's been, again, spending a lot of time in conversations figuring out how to move all this work forward, and I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about that.
Does that grant include the staff time and permitting and everything, or is it just for the equipment?
It's just for the equipment, the purchase of the shelter, any power or electrical or, but no, there is no staff time. But we believe we're going to be able to use some of our Chica Peak
That grant. that makes
regular
sense.
Yes.
grant for, yes, the maintenance and operation. So good question, Jim.
Thank you.
On the fees, obviously, we've applied the percentage by column for the various fees, assessments. The FSEC is a contract, so that's not it's not applicable to a fee increase. Registration program is, the NOC program is. Of course, there's no outdoor burning revenue. We applied the percentage, obviously, to the asbestos and land clearing. For the Title V program, that covers 11 major sources in our 6-county region. And based on what percent the board decides to go with, the 11 sources will face increases, obviously, and they'll face increases anywhere between 11 to 15%. Part of that increase includes the workload that has gone into the program that has exceeded the revenue coming in. Mark Gooden, would you like to elaborate on that at all? On the Title V program, is that sufficient?
Looks like you're muted, Mark. If
Yeah, there it is. I had too many things open. No, not at this time. I mean, that's correct. With the various scenarios, options 1 through 4, the increases range from 11 to up to a little over 15% for options 3 and 4. And that a lot of the reason for that is that our workload this year with the pandemic, with Fran leaving and costs associated with that, increased the amount of cost that we attribute to that program. So I'll just stop there, and I'm sure you'll have questions later on.
Mark, what's 15% in dollars for like an average size or for the biggest, just so I can have context for that?
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna have to find the right screen here. Hold on 1 second, and I'll go right to options 3 and 4.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
And I'll go to, so yeah, those are aggregate increases, but in dollars, I'm gonna, okay, let's see, we'll take McKinley Paper. Their fee amount for fiscal year 2022 was $48,923, and for 2023 it would be $56,772, so a 16% increase.
Okay, cool. That's really helpful for me. Thank you. Are they the biggest?
That's they are the biggest.
Okay.
Biggest increase. They received 16% increase. So all the rest are, or let's see, one more, Jim. Here's actually the Sierra Pacific Shelton. They actually, so in 2022, 49,347. Oh no, excuse me. 87,096, and they're up to 100,719.
I'm sorry, I think I drifted off for a moment, but I missed how we got from 7% increase in fees to 15%.
Because it's the cost analysis too.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the 7.4% fee increase is applied to all of the fee-funded programs except Title V. Title V is a federal program, and EPA requires that program to stand on its own 2 feet. And so the increases for Title V are load following. So we track our workload and fund it. So the increases you see in Title V are separate and independent from the 7.4.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Any further questions on the fees?
So I just wanted to, because we're 15 minutes from the board meeting, should we talk at the high level around these scenarios for a minute so you know where to go for the next meeting? Or do you want to, I'm sorry, Greg, I thought that would be a good question to ask right now.
And timeline too. I mean, we're not talking about it in the general meeting today. So just kind of, I think that's good. Let's go 1,000-foot view about the budget.
Okay. Feedback.
Because we have 2 more meetings, right? But the June one, we have to bring the same day. Okay.
Do you have an option that you're thinking about?
What? Can I just say
An option?
where I am on it, Greg?
Please, Jim. Yes.
So I think the hardest part for me is, anything under 7.4, our employees are losing money. But the other side of that is, no, I don't think any public employee has gotten actual costs that I know of. And I would guess that the average around in Olympia anyway is around 5 over the last budget cycle. So I lean towards the option 2 just because it feels like kind of the sweet spot in the economy. But I also don't want to leave money on the table unnecessarily for our operations, right? So I'm struggling with the whole piece of this. I'd almost want to see a scenario that's 5 and 7 for an option 5. Take care of the employees at 5 and do the fees at the 7. But the thing that's missing for me in this packet to be able to make that decision is the impact on the 5-year unrestricted bottom line. Because it looks to me like you're going to burn through it in like 3 years at the way this model is set up.
Correct.
Randy, do you have any input?
Yeah, I'd like to add a little something in there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so in Mason County, we did away with COLAs a long time ago here. It wasn't effective, it wasn't a true good measure of what to do. I myself, there's no way that even Mason County is getting a 5% increase this year. That's just not going to happen. We got to remember we have different entities that we have to be comparable with somewhere. I like the idea that was put forward originally, the idea of the 3%, and then calculating as we actually do the comparables of what they have in the industry. There's nothing wrong with making 2 adjustments a year if we had to, but also I'm in the middle of contract negotiations with 6 different unions. So I assure you, every action I make and everything I do will be reflected in those contracts, and they will notice every action I do in these other entities. So I just wanted to throw that out there because we have so many others that are going through the same thing. That's where I'd land.
Yeah, I mean, we just went through a lot of contract negotiations as well, and arrived at 9% over 3 years. So closer to that 3%. I mean, I guess I try to look through a macro lens as well. Are we contributing to inflation if we're pumping our fees up as well and everything? So I'm on the more conservative side too, especially as Jeff points out with the salary study on the near term horizon. So I think I'm probably somewhere between Jim and Randy and thinking, I'd be okay with option 1. I'd be okay with option 2. Option 3 just looks like it's burning too hot. But, and then option 4 is creative, but I guess I look through that macro lens and I'm afraid that we're just contributing to inflation and in a small way. So I could be talked into either option 1 or option 2 at this point.
Well, and I would just say in that spot, like if we were to be in that, just those 2 in the conversation, I think for me, I know the salary survey is going to be big. So, you know, softening that and doing the 5 so that we don't have too big of a jump when we do see that data. But also realizing that when we did this before, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn, I think we phased it in, the salary survey in over like 3 budgets, right? We didn't do it all at once either.
Yes, that is correct, Jim. Good memory. Yes. 3
Okay.
years, correct.
Okay, well, I guess to go back to the timeline, I think we know where we're standing. I don't think there's very much distance between the 3 members of this committee. And I assume that it would be similar on the larger board as well. So I guess, Jeff, I'm not sure if you or Lynn, but how do you see the process going to make sure that we have ample time to discuss these options with the whole board before we have to make a decision in June?
One question, if we could get before we get into process. So what I'm hearing is that folks tend to like the straight up options, either 1, 2, or 3, and so any salary adjustment percentages being consistent with fee increases and not doing kind of a mix and match as option 4 was, or at least Greg, you expressed that in your mind. Are Jim, Randy, are you liking more of the, again, options 1 or 2? And so having fees.
I'm liking the idea of the one of the 3% increase now and taking a second bite of the apple later if need be. That's if need be. And this way it would also separate out and set it up over 3 years. Makes more sense to me because that's how we do our contracts. The idea of jumping up 7.5% or even 5% right now one time is scary because that's not going to happen at my county. And I don't want to set that precedence where I know I'll be done with these contracts within the next 3-4 months.
And but
Okay.
Randy, to Jeff's question, do you favor increase and the salary increase the same?
I'm sorry, you were breaking up. Say it one more time. I'm sorry.
So, you know, I think what Jeff is trying to do as we bring this all in front of the whole board is make it a little simpler. Option 4 talks about a different, 3% CPI, 7.4% fee increase. And I think I expressed at least that let's just keep it, whatever we decide the same. And I think that's Jeff's question. If that's.
No, I agree. I agree with that statement. I'd like to keep it the same of what we're doing. Also, I want to remind everybody, if we're cash rich right now, that makes no sense to make large increases. I expect that it'll start to catch up on the next year. And as we know, quite often government does it on the year before or after situation or numbers. So we remake up what we saw for the numbers the year before.
Yeah, and based on this, I'm a solid option 2 now. Based on your conversations, ORCAA is not cash rich, and all of our member jurisdiction and all of their members or all of our permittees for the most part are. We've missed out on the cash rich world that's happening in most other sectors right now. So that's where I am. I just can't see passing on only a 3%, but maybe I could get somewhere between there and 5.2 also.
Well, then let's go with 5.2. I'm always into working in between, and
You're breaking up a little bit, Randy. Couldn't hear that last comment, but I'm gonna just table that conversation. We don't have a lot of time left, and the actual rate that we arrive upon is, not just for us to decide. But I appreciate the insight, and I think we've narrowed down the options that staff will present.
Yep. So I think we've gotten some direction. So it sounds like 5.2. What I'd like to do is to work with Lynn and Mark to figure out if a straight across 5.2, I'd like to look at what that does to the difference between our fees. I mean, will a 5.2% fully pay for some of these programs? And if not, what do we need to do? So I'd like to dig in more now that we have this direction from you, like to dig in more on what this 5.2% means for our programs.
I would say, Jeff, we haven't really necessarily decided on 5.2%.
Sure.
And Randy's expressed clearly 3. I think we're on the lower end of that spectrum.
Yeah.
But pinning the fees, the fees and the CPI together.
Well, I would
I'd
say
that,
that,
in the effort of moving forward, moving together, I can go ahead with what Jim was recommending at the 5.2. I would not stand against that, for the fees.
and so then what I would ask is for Jeff to take this input back to staff and bring us his recommendation based on this conversation, that we can, work around the edges and adopt a draft budget to recommend to the board.
Okay, sounds good. And we do have folks gathering in the waiting room, so we should give people a few minutes to, get
Yeah.
in and take their virtual seats.
So if I could just ask Lynn, was there any sort of last questions? Again, we'll talk more about this, but do you have any last questions for the board members here?
And thanks, Jeff. I hear that option 3 is out. That's consistent with the board. And then option 4 does not sound like a viable. So option 1 and 2 with the possible new option 3 with a 3% cost of living increase and a 5.2% fee increase.
Yeah, I think that's potential. I mean, if that's necessary, I think especially if your analysis shows, we're going to be getting in the red in 5 years with the 3% fee
Right.
increase. So,
Yeah, that's what I want to see. I need to see that number.
Okay, option
What's
2
the
and
5
3
year?
here. Okay, option 1 and 2 remain, a new option 3, and a 5-year forecast. Okay.
And then do we need to
Thank
talk
you.
about payroll processing?
Well, the ADP, I can always bring this up in the full board if you would like. Jim Cooper is familiar with what we experienced back in January with Thurston County.
Thurston
Mr.
150.
Cooper, would you like to bring this up with the whole board? It'll be a brief update.
Yeah, because you don't need action. It's just an update on a change, right? Yeah, I'm fine with that
Exactly.
if the rest of the committee is.
Okay. We'll
Okay,
just, add that to the agenda for the general meeting and talk about that there. So,
You just gonna
Okay,
do it
and
under your update, Fran? Or Lynn, I'm sorry.
yes, Bill. Yes, Jim.
Perfect. Just don't
Yeah,
call me
we'll
late for
see.
dinner.
I'll leave the lights on. Thank you.
all right, great. Well, anything for the good of the order?
Thank you all for your support.
Thank you for the memo. That made preparing for this meeting the easiest I've experienced. So I was really appreciative of that.
I just assumed that
Yeah,
with
I did.
the level of service we always get here, but it was great. I really,
It was a good add-on.
And I want to say I appreciate
Thank
how
you.
everybody works together here.
Yes, absolutely. All right, we'll see y'all in a few minutes.
okay. We are
Thank
adjourned.
you.
Okay, I'll be right back.